What's up YouTube, this is Dennis Panuta for tutorials.eu. In this video I have something very special for you, and that is that we're going to build a tool that allows us to transcribe our audio and video files. So we can just upload the file, and then after a couple of minutes or seconds we can get the transcribed version of that audio file. And we're going to use AssemblyAI for that, which is also the sponsor of this video. So thanks a lot for sponsoring this video. And by the way, if you think that's a cool idea for an application to build and in general a cool tutorial, then definitely hit that like button as well as the subscribe button, and also leave a message in the comments with some ideas that you have that we could implement using AssemblyAI. Because if AssemblyAI is happy with this video and you are happy with it, we are going to create a bunch more of these tutorials. So let's have a look at what we're going to build. But before that, a quick shout out to the sponsor AssemblyAI. So if you ever need automatic speech recognition with incredible accuracy, then AssemblyAI's speech to text API is the way to go. It's trusted by Fortune 500s, by startups and thousands of developers around the world because it accurately transcribes audio and video files with a simple API. So extract insights like topics, sentiments and more powered by this advanced API. And the cool thing is you can even do such things as to know which speaker said what, and based on that build an application. So let's have an overview of the video before we get started with the application. So what's the plan? Well, if you go through the AssemblyAI docs, you will find that the API expects to receive the audio file in the form of a URL. But the problem is my audio file is sitting on my drive. So first, we will send our file to an API endpoint called uploading using an HTTP post request. And this will give us a URL to our audio file. After that, we will store this URL in a JSON object and send it via a post request to the transcript endpoint. And no, we won't get our text immediately because quality work takes time. So we will instead get an ID for our request and let's say a ticket. And just like when you order takeaway from a restaurant, you will keep checking if it's ready. So we will send our ID to the transcript endpoint using a GET request and maybe keep calling it until it finishes processing our audio file. Once our request is processed, we will get the transcribed text in return. Keep in mind that AssemblyAI offers the ability to use webhooks, which means you can get notified once the processing is done without the need to keep checking manually. But we're not going to cover webhooks in this video. Yet if you feel like this would be an amazing tutorial, let me know in the comments. Now, of course, we will do all of these requests in async manner while sending JSON, using HTTP requests. Well, all of these topics are covered on our YouTube channel, and I will link them down in the description below. So in case you don't feel confident using these topics, definitely check out our videos on JSON, HTTP requests and async. So these 3 videos for you to have a full understanding of what's going on in this video. But if you just want to be able to use it, be my guest, just follow the video and you will be able to transcribe your audio and video files. All right, so let's get started using AssemblyAI's speech to text API, which is super powerful. I'm super happy about this sponsorship. And I would say let's get started by creating an account because we are going to require an API key, of course, in order to then use the AssemblyAI API. And by the way, before you click on Start Now for free, please go ahead and use our link here that you can see. It just helps AssemblyAI to see that we were the ones sending you to their page, because this really helps us out, and this will allow us to create more tutorials such as these in the future, where you can learn programming by building real life examples such as this one, using amazing APIs such as AssemblyAI. So please go ahead and use the link in the description down below, and we're also going to add a pinned comment with this link. So definitely use that link before registering. Thanks a lot. So let's go ahead and start for free. That's the really cool thing here. So here you just need to quickly create an account. You see it's the #1 rated for accuracy, speech to text powered by deep learning. Accuracy updates every month. It's trusted by developers. Millions of audio files already are being transcribed every single day. And you can also get speaker labels, summarizations, and so forth. It's really cool. Once you have created your account, you will find your API key here. You can just click on it and then it will be copied into your clipboard. For developers, you will find a 2-minute quick start, an example using Python and using Node.js, but we are going to use C# in our example. And of course, you can check out the documentation for it on this page as well. Now that we have the API key, let's go ahead and create a console application with Visual Studio or any other tool that you want to use. I'm going to call it AssemblyAI Demo. I'm going to use .NET 5, even though .NET 3.1 or 6, once it comes out, will be fine as well. So the first thing you should do is to create a string with your API key so that you can use it throughout your project. Then inside of the main method, I'm going to create an HTTP client that I'm going to need in order to access the website. So here I have this HTTP client, which of course I need to import. Therefore, we need to use system.net HTTP. Okay, then this HTTP client will have the base address of api.assemblyai.com v2. Okay, so this is going to be the URI, which we are going to then add the API key to. So after this slash, we will add our authorization API key. So we do that by using the default request headers .add method. Now the next thing that we're going to use are going to be tasks. Therefore, I will need to add the namespace threading.tasks, as I want to create a method that will take care of sending a file. And the file that I want to send is going to be my audio file that I hear. So I have this audio recording and it's a 3 MB file with a length of 2 minutes. So it's going to transcribe the entire file for me. And of course, we first have to send the file, then the file will be transcribed by the service of AssemblyAI, and then we can download the text directly using JSON, which we're going to do. Therefore, I'm going to have this method that will be a private static async task, which I'm going to call SendFile. And it has, of course, to return an await. And then I'm creating this method called SendFile, which will be an async method, and it requires an HTTP client that we can pass to it. And guess what? We have one ready up here, and we need to pass the file path of the file that we want to be transcribed. So here, because things can go wrong here, we need to use a try and catch block. So let's add that here with a exception that I'm going to call EX. So in case of an exception, I'm just going to throw the exception and display something onto the console with the exception message. And then in case there's no exception, things went right, I first of all need to create a HTTP request here. So this will be my new HTTP request of type post method, and we're going to use the upload API for our endpoint. Then we need to add the request headers, and I'm going to add the header of transfer encoding with the value of chunked. So the name will be transfer encoding and the value will be chunked. Next, we need to read the file, and I'm just going to read my file path that is passed to our SendFile method. And then we can read that file as a stream using our file reader object. Okay, so here, stream content, we're creating a new stream content object passing the file reader. And then we can set the request contents to our data stream using request.content, passing our stream content that we just prepared. And now we can send the request, which will be an await request. So here, an HTTP response message, which I'm just going to call response, and we're awaiting something that will be done asynchronously. So we are using our client, which will be passed, which is this HTTP client, and then we are sending an asynchronous request, which is the request that we just prepared in these lines here, basically starting from here. Now, accordingly, we are going to return something because you can see our SendFile method up here is still not very happy about it. So let's go ahead and return the response as a string. And as this is an asynchronous method here, we need to add the await keyword. So we're going to return the response as a string using response.content.read as a string asynchronously. So it serializes the HTTP content to a string as an asynchronous operation. So that's perfect because that's exactly what we need with projects that load data from the web. And now let's go ahead and call the SendFile method. And I'm going to store the result of it, which will be a string, inside of a variable that I'm going to call JSON result, because it will be of type JSON, and we can then read the details from it in a JSON object later on. So I will need to add the file path, and I'm going to pass the client, of course. So the client that we prepared, I'm passing it to my SendFile method, and then I need to add a file path string. So I'm going to use the file, this audio file that I have prepared, which is this one here. So audio rec 4MA. So I need to get the entire path. First of all, the folder in which the file is, and then I can add the file name. So here, let me mark that as well, including the extension. And now I can get the result from it. So the result property, so gets the result value of this task. And now we just need to display this with JSON result. So let's use console write line and display the JSON result onto the console. Let's run this and see if our file will be uploaded properly. And we can see that the file was uploaded using the upload URL that you can see here. Okay, cool. So now we know that our audio file was uploaded. And next I would like to get the transcribed text of it. Okay, so it should also be displayed in my console. All right, so now in order to avoid some bugs and weird behavior, let's first clean our client. So here client.dispose, this will clean the client. And now let's go ahead and create a new client, set it up. So here, of course, we're just going to overwrite the existing client. We're not creating a new one as such. So we have the same base address. We are passing the same headers because we need to pass in the API key in order to get access to our transcribed text. So now I would like to add the URL. The problem is we need to use the JSON response that we get here. And from that, I would like to only get this string here and not the entire string. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to read this JSON properly. Therefore, we need to make sure that we have the Newtonsoft JSON package installed. So go to Tools, New Get Package Manager, and then manage the new get package just for the solution. So here you can search for Newtonsoft and browse, not the ones that are installed. And we need to install this particular one, Newtonsoft JSON. So let's add it to our package. Click install, and this will add Newtonsoft to your project, which is a package that makes working with JSON a lot easier. All right, now in order to use it, we need to add the namespace for it. So let's go ahead and add using newtonsoft.json. This will allow us to work with JSON files super easily. And I'm also going to create an inner class here. Of course, you could create a separate file, but I'm just going to keep it simple this time. So here, class upload item, and we could see that it only had one type of detail. It was a string that was called upload URL. And I'm just going to use get and setters here, because if you run the application, you can see that this is exactly how it's written, right? Upload underscore URL. So that is the property name, which is of type string, and that's exactly how you have to spell it here. So now in the main method, we can go ahead and create our JSON object. So var JSON, which will be a new JSON object. And you can just use the following approach where you just add the brackets and then you use the name audio underscore URL, which is exactly the string that we have here. So the key, and here we can use JSON convert dot deserialize object. So we need to deserialize our object, which is going to be an upload item object. And this is a class upload item. And then we need to pass the object that we want to be used. So here we're going to use our JSON result, and of it the property called upload URL. So what's going on here? Well, we're using our JSON result from up here, and we are saying that it should be of type upload item, which is this class that we just created. And this class has a property called upload URL. So we're using the upload URL property here, which we want to store inside, which we store as a JSON object now. Now let's create an HTTP content that represents our JSON object. So this is going to be a string content from our JSON, which we will need for our next request. Therefore, I will need to use encoding. So let's use system.text namespace as well. Here, let's add that system.text namespace. So now let's send the request to the transcript endpoint and give it our string content. So here we create a HTTP response message object, which I'm going to call response, and we're awaiting this post sync call. So we're using this time the transcript endpoint. Okay, so here we just used v2. Here there's endpoint as the base address, and this time we're using /transcript here using our payload. And our payload is the string content that we prepared earlier on. And we are serializing the JSON object, which is this one here, where we are also saying that our string content will be using UTF-8 and will be of type JSON. So now we can post asynchronously, load this with our payload, and then we are throwing an exception if the request did not go through by using response.ensure success status code. So now in order for this error to disappear, we need to make sure that our main method is going to be an asynchronous method. So we need to add the async task keywords here. And then of course we will replace void with it. So now in order to display the response, I first need to read the content of the response, and we need to await it because it's working asynchronously. This is an asynchronous method. And we're reading the string asynchronously as well, storing it in this response JSON, which we are now using the console for in order to display it. So let's run this. Okay, and now you can see that we get the response that contains data about our file and the setting of our transcribing, like the content safety, for example, to censor sensitive stuff, labeling the speakers if we had a conversation in the audio file, because in my audio file it's just me, but the AssemblyAI allows you to also distinguish between different speakers inside of a file, which is super powerful. And now just reading those settings can give you an idea on how powerful this tool really is. So for the sake of the simple tutorial, we are only interested in the ID, which we will need to submit to the API again to get our result, since our files might take some time to get transcribed depending on the size of the file. So now let's change our app a bit so that we can actually choose between uploading a file and getting the ID or ticket from our API and checking whether our file is ready and display its data. Okay, so how I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a request here. So checking what the user wants to do, telling him to select 1 to send the file, and then 2 to check if the file is ready. So in case the user just wants to send the file, we're going to do everything that is going all the way to write in the response. And else we want to check if the file is ready. So in case number 2, I will ask the user for the ticket ID. So please enter the ID. And then we can call the API and send the ticket ID to see if it's ready. So let's use an HTTP client once again. So using an HTTP client, new client, we get the default request headers with authorization and our API key. Then we add accepts the application JSON, and then we send a GET request to the transcript endpoint and add the ticket ID to the URL. Okay, so here we're saying response message will be the HTTP client get async with the ticket ID that we have entered as the user of the console application. Okay, so let me put that in a separate line so it's more readable. And then we make sure the calls went through. So we're ensuring success status for our response, and we take the answer into the response JSON to then display it using WriteLine. So let's try this and see if we can get a transcript. So please select one to send the file. So I'm going to send a file. I'm going to get this ID. So let me copy this ID from here. And now close the window. Let's run the application once again. And now I'm going to enter the ID. Press enter again. And then you see the status is processing. Now let's wait for a bit until processing is done, or until the file is finally processed, and then we will also see the words as a result here. So currently they're null, and the text is null as well. So let me run it again after a couple of minutes, and I have this other project ready, and you can see there's a lot more text that we get. So let me scroll all the way up. You can see it's quite a bit. So here I see the text which says, "Hi coders, it's September, the time of the year where people go back to school or university or even back to their job after vacation." That's pretty much what I said in my audio file. And yeah, it's pretty good. So you can even see for every single word that it was using. So hi with a confidence of 98%. Then the word coders with a confidence of 87%. And it even says where its end is and where its start is. And then here, let's go to September here, for example, that has a confidence of 93%. So it's pretty good stuff. You can really see for every single keyword the confidence of what it had when it comes to transcribing. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Now you know how to use AssemblyAI in order to create your own transcribing software. So we have this little tool that can transcribe an audio file, but also a video file. Now we could of course go ahead and build a WPF solution around it, which would include a UI where you can then select the file and it would be a proper executable file. But for this video, that's going to be it. If you have some other ideas what we could do with AssemblyAI, which kind of software we could build, and you would like to learn how to build that, then leave your ideas in the comments down below. We're going to revisit them and definitely are going to consider them. So thanks a lot for watching the video again, and I hope to see you in the next one.